Hello. Hopefully people can hear me. Give me a little hi sign or chat and let me know that you're out there and that you can hear me. Welcome. April 7th. I am actually coming to you live from my daughter's guest bedroom. So, no, not an office. Nobody's working in offices these days. And as it turned out, I was traveling when things became escalated and was visiting my daughter and her family in Tampa, Florida. So I decided to just stay and not head back to California. So I've been in Tampa since the 14th, 13th of March. So anyway, so my life has changed significantly, and I know that it has for a lot of you. So I wanted to do this session on Ask Me Anything, really focused around managing through this crisis because it's hard and it's challenging. And frankly, none of us have ever experienced anything like we're doing today. So before I jump into the questions I've already received, note that there is a live chat. And so if other questions come up, please drop me a line. But I also want to take the time to explain why I'm even doing these. I'm actually once a month having a live YouTube session on Ask Me Anything. And I talk about career advice, talk about entrepreneurship, and then topics of the day like managing through this crisis. And I'm doing this because I've been fortunate. I've been fortunate to have a lot of different experiences and a career that I'm proud of. And I've learned a lot along the way, made mistakes, gained a lot of learnings. And frankly, I want to take the time to share with others so that all of you can achieve your aspirations. That's what it's all about. And just FYI, I've actually written a book that's coming out in October called Unapologetically Ambitious. And it's all about that. How to achieve your aspirations by improving your odds to succeed. So, anyway, we can talk more about that later. But let me jump now into the questions because these times are just surreal. All right, first one. What would you say to someone who is in the process of starting a business at this time? Do you think it's the time to press forward or wait and see exactly what effects COVID-19 will be having on the economy? Well, frankly, it depends upon the type of business you were planning to start because some areas right now are actually growing. Healthcare, growing. Delivery services, growing. Online entertainment, growing. Um, Online training and workshops, growing. Uh, Things around self grooming, like how to cut your own hair, which, oh, by the way, hopefully I did okay. I actually cut my own, or I shouldn't say cut because I didn't cut all of it, but I definitely trimmed up the sides myself this morning. I had to order a pair of clippers to actually do that. So, anyway, we're all learning new skills in this process. So, anyway, or what's another industry? Another industry that's growing is tech support and tools to support all of those things I talked about because companies still have to support their customers. And in order to do that, they need tools and systems that allow them to do it in remote environments and disconnected environments. So if you're planning to start a business in any of those areas, or do your own research, I just rattled off a few that I'm aware of. If it's an industry that's currently growing, even with the crisis, then I say go for it. If it's not, if it's one that's being challenged, for instance, if you're planning to build an event company, no, do not press forward. Revenues for events have gone to zero. But you have to look at it and then decide what the risks are, put plans in place to mitigate those risks, and then decide, can you live with the level of risk that you have to assume? So that would be my answer. But if you decide not to launch now because of timing, that doesn't mean that you shouldn't not launch at any point, and you can still be working on the plan and the strategy, collecting data, looking at targets. There's a lot of work you can do without actually pushing that launch button during this challenging period so that when we do come out of it, which, oh, by the way, we will, we've lived through many crises in the past, and we will live through this one too. So get yourself ready. Take the time to prepare and strengthen your overall game plan and then launch. All right, next question. Given the massive digital transformation that COVID-19 is driving for businesses all around the world, large and small, how can we leverage these rapid changes and the potential for future events, etc., to drive more equity and equality in the world. In other words, can the disruption of business as usual make space for more social equality? And if so, what actions do we need, etc.? Well, I'll be candid. Typically, whenever you go through a crisis, and whether, I've lived through several, whether it was the dot-com bust in the 2001 timeframe, it was 9/11, or even the financial crisis, right, in 2008, 2009. One of the things that always happens during a crisis is the disparity between those who have wealth and those who don't actually increases coming out of it. And it happens for a number of reasons. People who typically have wealth and assets are able to do a number of things to mitigate the challenge, where those who are living paycheck to paycheck, and have risks, etc., they don't have as many options. So they tend to get disproportionately disenfranchised during this period. So during the period and coming right out of it, that's typically not a good time to actually improve social equality. But what I'm very hopeful for is that after this particular crisis, which is very different, this one is health driven, that we will, as a people, and therefore, at least as a country, and I think this is true for many countries, realize the risk that we carry by not having a system that provides at least basic health care. And therefore, awareness is the first step to solving any problem. And if we all raise that level of awareness and shine the light on that particular issue, then I'm hopeful that we can solve it. And while that's just one issue, you'd be amazed what kind of foundation having access to basic health care actually provides. Even during 2008, 2009, when the housing crisis was at its peak and people were being foreclosed and, et cetera, the number one cause for bankruptcies was still healthcare. So if we have a solution that gives people basic health care, it will actually provide the foundation to strengthen a number of areas throughout the economy. All right. How do we build a dedicated customer base? All right. Now, I'm not sure if this is focused on during this period or in general, but since we're focused on the crisis, let me talk about this relative to this period. One of the keys, absolute keys to success for any business is the strength of their relationships with their customers, because those relationships drive loyalty. So when you go through a crisis, it's actually more important than ever to be in touch with your customers. Now, that's whether or not they are active today, because frankly, some of your customers won't be able to be active today because they've been disproportionately affected by this COVID period. But as I said, we're going to come out of the crisis. So if you continue to stay in touch, communicate, check in with your customers, when you come out of this crisis, you will be in a better position to have a strong relationship. And they'll remember that. So now's the time to actually communicate even more with your customers, both current and active, as well as those that are inactive, because they can be your growth engine coming out of the crisis itself. So the number one way to cultivate good, lasting, and loyal customers is to communicate with them and make sure that you're actually adding value in those communications. Are there things that you can offer that don't have a cost, but that they would see as valuable or helpful? And you see a number of companies out there doing that. I'll give you a big company example. I'm on the board of Verizon, and Verizon is now making the New York Times digital available to schools, and therefore the students that attend, right, those different schools for free, as a way of using that to help communicate both what's happening and help schools build that into their learning. You have organizations that are providing services, even entertainment, suddenly that they're not charging for and making available to people. They're doing that because they realize times are tough and they want to see as being sensitive to that, but they're also hopeful that by doing that, people will value it. And when things do come back and they do now have choices on where to spend their money and who to work with, that they will choose them. All right. How do we maintain momentum in times of crisis? And I'm actually going to tie this in with the next question, too. There's two questions. How do we maintain momentum? And I'm assuming this is from a business standpoint. And then the second question is, how do we develop staff culture in the midst of social distancing? And the reason I want to put these two together is when you think about creating and maintaining momentum with your team, as well as getting that culture built and strengthened, there are really a few things that you can do that actually affect both. So first, how do you maintain momentum? It's really discipline focus. It's making sure that whatever your team is working on, whatever your deliverables are, those kinds of things, that you stay focused enough to be able to get those things done. But it's how you actually execute. So first, as a team leader, it's important to really reset expectations a little bit because people were used in general to coming together to getting things done. Teams work more closely. Work tend to happen, synchronously, right? They happened with people working together. Well, now that we're all spread apart, it's now happening asynchronously. And you're not able necessarily to keep tabs on every step that's happening and all that's being executed. So you need to reset expectations to acknowledge that, hey, people now need to be able to work, but work within their own time horizons, as long as the results actually get achieved. Because people are balancing things, right? Some people are actually at home and balancing, trying to make homeschooled kids. Others have family members or relatives that they're taking care of. I mean, and then you've got the general having to do more than you were doing before because suddenly you can't leverage any kind of help. So acknowledging with your employees that that's the case and just reset expectations, say, okay, here are the four things that we have to go get done. Here's when we have to get them done by. Now let's figure out who's going to do what and go get it done. But step back from the micromanaging aspect of what you do and give people the freedom and the flexibility to do it when they can do it, as long as timelines are met. And they will so appreciate that. The second point is to stay in regular communications. And now this one I cannot overemphasize, because when you're in a time of crisis and a time of uncertainty and people are feeling unsettled, they're feeling scared, they're feeling nervous, all those things, they actually need more frequent touch points, not less. So much better to almost touch base every couple of days in informal ways than to plan a big formal every 2-week event. They want to be touched more often because they want to make sure that things are still okay, that you still know they're out there and they're doing work, right? And they're not being isolated. So those communications are really important, both in terms of group as well as checking in individually and on a regular kind of basis. I was talking about communications, building a team, and creating the culture, right, that you want. So I'm going to apologize if I'm repeating because I'm not sure when I lost everybody, but let's try this. Let's try this again. Um, Actually, tell me, have you not heard from the beginning or did you just lose me midstream? Can somebody tell me? I see the chat. Eric, Ayori, or Nagin, or Bobby. Okay, let's see. I couldn't hear at all. Oh my goodness, from the beginning. Ah, okay. All right. Well, everyone, I totally apologize. I have no idea what happened here with the live stream. So I've just been talking to myself for a while. All right. So, all right, let me go back to the beginning. And apologies for that. Um, Two things. One, a quick reason why I'm doing this is I've learned a lot through my career. I've been fortunate to have achieved what I set out to achieve, and I'm really trying to share so that others can do the same thing. Let me just jump right into the questions. So, what would you say to someone who was in the process? Oh, wait, I heard from the point after societal changes. Okay, I'm not sure what question that was. All right. Well, I'm going to go through a couple questions quickly, and then I'll go back to the beginning, and that's probably the best way to do it. And that way I can cover at least the new ones and then back up. So let me talk about how to build a dedicated customer base. So I'm going to assume that this question had to do with during the COVID period. And what I'll tell you is customers are critical to your business, your relationship with customers, customer loyalty, all of that. So when you go through a time of crisis, it's actually more important than ever to reach out to customers. And by the way, that's current customers and past customers. Because depending upon your business, some customers are going to be negatively impacted by what's happening right now and will totally value the fact that you stay in touch. And even if you can figure out how to provide some kind of value in your communications, so when business does improve, they'll come back to you. So now's the time to reach out and let them know what you're going through in terms of your company, what you're trying to do to maintain both your business, provide value, support your customers, et cetera. Those things they find valuable. And that's how you build loyalty and dedication during this period. Next question, I'm going to combine with two questions. So, one was how do we maintain momentum in times of crisis? And the second was how do we develop staff culture in the midst of social distancing? And what I'll tell you is those two I'm putting together because what you're really talking about is how do you get teams to continue to execute well and in a way in which strengthens, supports the culture that you're trying to build over long term. So, first is discipline focus. Make sure people know what needs to get done now, what's important, and what the priorities are. Second, reset your expectations and the expectations of the team. For many, it used to be they came together to do work. So they were doing work synchronously. Well, now everybody's spread out and working from home. And oh, by the way, our home environments are very different. Some people have situations where it's easy for them to work at home, others, it's very hard. They may have children they need to homeschool, they have parents or relatives they're taking care of. They're now not getting as much potential support as they did before. So time is tough to manage. So we need to give them more flexibility about when they get things done as long as timelines are met. So reset expectations and acknowledge what people are feeling. Communications are absolutely critical during this time. You need to stay in regular touch. And regular touch is both individual check in, but it's also group or team gatherings. And oh, by the way, when you're coming together with your teams, you need to make sure that you acknowledge how they're feeling. Otherwise, it's just, I like to call it the elephant under the table. Everybody knows that people are scared and nervous, a little worried, frazzled, all of these things. And if you don't just say, hey, we know this is how people are feeling, and we need to figure out together, how we support each other and how we come together and get it working, then you're not going to have a lot of credibility as a manager or a leader. And people are going to think you're a bit tone deaf of just spewing out, here are things to get done without acknowledging the realities in which people are operating. So acknowledge and then figure out how to provide the flexibility, which is why priorities are really important. The other thing is leaders need to be positive, they need to be inspiring, and they need to show, oh gosh, and enthusiasm, even in what's going on right now. And the reason is it's contagious. If you're feeling optimistic and positive, that's going to come across in how you talk and how you speak. And frankly, your team members want to hear that. Because as I said, what we're going through is really hard, but we are going to come out of this. And reminding people that that is the case and letting them feel and put their trust right in you, which they will do. So how you speak, as well as how often you speak, is really important. And it's almost like the huddle in sports, right? The reason team members come together before a game or whatever and say, okay, right, let's go get them, let's go do this, let's rah, rah, rah. They're trying to psych each other up to go perform as well as they can perform. And frankly, with all that's going on, we've got to psych each other up so that we can get that done. And that's a key role of a manager and a leader right now. And that will really help with culture long term as people feel like part of that team. The other thing I encourage people to do is, continue short learnings now too. Show your people that you're still investing in them. When I was a leader and a manager, both in my CEO role, but frankly, even before my CEO role, I would do these 5, 10 minute snippets in front of each of my staff meetings that I call leadership topics. And I take like 5, 10 minutes and just share a topic around leadership. And I did that for a couple reasons. One, I wanted to help encourage and grow the leadership qualities of my team. I also used it because I wanted them to know what I expected, right, from leaders. And people valued that. So develop topics as you're having conversations and make sure that you're providing value to your team and learnings. But oh, by the way, it's not just up to you as the manager. People can learn from each other. So ask other people to come to the table with their topics and their ideas as well. And those are really the key things that you need to do now to really pull all that together. Uh, oh, one last thing. A lot of times there aren't updates. If you're talking to your team a couple times a week, it's not like major things change, but talk anyway. And oh, by the way, use the time to recognize and celebrate even the little wins and little accomplishments, because trust me, little things are hard right now, too. All right, let's go to the next question. Um, with unemployment predicted to soar due to the virus, how can we hire? There's definitely a need for more people to do certain jobs, but the economic prospect is not so great. And there's the urge on some part of management to hold off on such actions. When uncertainty is in the air, it is much more difficult to get people inspired about the future. This virus spread took it to the next level. How can we inspire when we don't know what the future holds? All right, so two different questions there. So the first one on unemployment, how can we hire? So, what I tell you is every company is making sure that they have the right strategy and tactics to successfully make it through the virus. And some companies are being hit really, really hard, and others not as much. So, there isn't one answer per company. And companies that are being hit really hard, think of companies in the hospitality industry, airlines, hotels, right, et cetera. Think of doctors' offices and dentists' office, more dentists than doctors. Um, Dentists are being hit hard, doctors are getting overwhelmed. So I can't give you one answer for how to approach this in general. But what I can tell you is be sensitive to the industry you're in and what the company's trying to get done. So it totally makes sense to hold off on new hires when there's uncertainty about the amount of work that a company needs to accomplish going forward. They're doing that to help save your job, right? And other jobs. At the same time, if there is a spike in work and business and you need more hands, then think about bringing people on in a temporary way for now, that when things continue and get better, you could potentially turn into permanent, but it gives flexibility. So work with your management and your organization to understand where are you really on that spectrum. Now, we talked about the uncertainty in the air and how can we inspire people when we don't know what the future holds. What I'll tell you is a leader's role is to always paint the picture for the future. That's the vision. Create the vision of where we're trying to go. And frankly, it doesn't matter what's happening right now for that vision. The vision could still be the vision. Then, once you have the vision, then the leader's job is to figure out the team that's required to put together to actually put the strategy in place, right, for that vision and to execute on it. And you execute a set of tactics. So when the virus hits, yes, it changes how to execute. And it may change the strategy, but it should not change the vision. And that's how you keep people inspired. If you're in let me talk about a business, right? If you're in the business of I'll talk about MetricStream, right? That's where I was before. I'll talk about MetricStream. MetricStream is in the business of governance, risk, and compliance, and to really help companies excel in their operations by effectively managing their risk, right? And operating and executing with integrity. Now, that doesn't change whether there's a virus and we're having healthcare issues or there's a crisis or not. How they execute may change, but the vision should be the same. So, as a leader, make sure people understand what that vision is, what we're aspiring to ultimately. And then when it comes down to what you do, what you need to execute, it's fine to change those. That's changing the plan. So you need to change the plan to react to what's happening in the marketplace, but keep the vision in mind. And when you do that, you'll be able to keep people inspired. One of the metaphors I like to use for how to inspire and the impact of inspiration is the brick layer. All right. So here's this man walking around, a bunch of people working, and the people are basically laying bricks. And he comes up to this one worker who looks tired and haggard and worn down, and he says to him, "What are you doing?" As he picks up a brick and slaps it with cement and sticks it on the top of the next brick and grabs the next one. And it's hot and it's sunny. And he says, "What does it look like I'm doing? I'm laying bricks." Right? So you think, okay, this guy's obviously downtrodden. He's kind of working kind of slow and fine. Keeps walking around this area and this building site, and he comes to another guy. And this guy is whistling, he's getting his bricks, he's slapping on the cement, and he's putting the brick on, all positive. And the guy's like, "Oh, what are you doing?" And he says, "I'm building the foundation of a cathedral." I share that story because it's all in the outlook. What you're doing is the same. But if you understand why you're doing it, what it's leading to, it makes all the difference in your ability to execute. So, as a leader, make sure you're always painting that picture so that you keep people inspired when they have to lay bricks. Because periodically, we all have to lay bricks. All right, next one. As a first time leader in a large organization, I've received inconsistent direction from senior executives as it relates to the company's strategy for conserving cash, cutting costs during this time period, etc. How would you recommend that leaders speak up without offending anyone when seeing inconsistent strategic direction being flowed down? So, this is one where it takes courage. And I say courage because it's not always easy to question what you're being asked to do. And my big advice for this is gather your facts. So if you're being asked to do things that seem diametrically opposed, don't just, all right, let me figure out, what to do here, because you may absolutely do something wrong and then unintentionally you actually get dinged for it. Much better to gather the facts, put down what you were asked that actually conflicted, take it to your manager and review it. Let me give you an example. Let's say you were told on one hand to cut marketing expenses by 75%, which some companies are doing right now. And on the other hand, you're asked to grow your sales leads. Well, those seem to be opposed. If I'm not investing in marketing, how am I going to get the sales leads done? All right. So, first step is don't walk right in with those two things and say, "Hey, what do you expect me to do here?" Think through it first. Is there something that could be done? Maybe it's changing how you actually generate those leads. So instead of using, I'll make it up, expensive media advertising, etc., maybe now you're going to try to create some on the ground activity, maybe some word of mouth, or maybe you can use social media or whatever, right? Come up with ways that you might be able to get it done or at least to improve the lead generation. But again, 75% cut will probably not allow you to do it significantly. Now you go to your boss to say, "Listen, I've been asked to cut, but grow leads. I've thought through some options. Here are the options that exist. But frankly, it's still not going to get us to the lead growth that I've been asked to achieve. How can you help me reconcile this?" Now, what you've done in taking time to think about it first is you've shown and demonstrated to your boss that you have initiative because you didn't just throw it back at them. You actually tried to do some work and do an analysis and come up with some suggestions and then highlighted where you fall short, right? That's fine. And it's fine then to take that and raise that up to management to ask for their input and their advice. But if you just get some feedback down and then just play it back to say, "Hey, what do you want me to do?" What you're showing is you actually don't have creativity and initiative. And you're just putting the monkey, as you might call it, back on your boss's shoulders. And if you do that, then they don't really need you. So, yes, it's fine to raise it up, but make sure you do some of the work first so that when you come back, you've actually teed up the problem in a more specific way. Hope that helped. And feel free, by the way, guys, if you have questions and I have a problem, a lexicon problem. I use the word guys and I mean people. So men and women. So apologies. But if you have questions, please throw them out there on the live chat. I am monitoring it. Okay. As a first line leader with a team of 6 people, communications in the new virtual environment is crucial. Team members have uncertainties about the state of the company and if layoffs will occur. What are your thoughts on communicating down and up during this period? Well, we talked about communications a little bit before when I said it's really important to communicate often, both individually as well as bringing your team together. So, absolutely do that. And it's also important to acknowledge how people feel. But by the way, don't set or make promises you can't keep. So when people say, are there going to be layoffs? It's okay to say, I don't know. Don't say, no, there won't be, because you know what? You don't know. But you can say that typically when layoffs happen, they happen as a last resort. And that is true. Hold on a minute. Allergies. Um, and that is true. So right now, we need to make sure that we are creating as much value for this company as possible so that they don't have to resort to that last result. But be candid. Don't sugarcoat. All right. Now, don't still fear either. You don't want to say, I have no idea and who knows what's going to happen. I mean, that's not very confidence inspiring. So, you want to make sure that you're still inspiring confidence, but that you're speaking truthfully. And continue with those other things I said: regular communications, being positive on the outlook, asking people how they are. And, one of the tools that you can use here is actually when you get on, ask people how they are and ask them to rate it 1 to 10 and then see what people say. And by the way, don't do this in a group, but in your one on ones. And then ask them why. And then next time you check in with them, ask them what their rating is so that you can see if together you're improving how they feel or not. And it also shows that you care, not just generally, but specifically. Okay, next question. Are there any specific skill sets you recommend leaders cultivate during the rapidly evolving business environment? Yes. One of the things that you can do, because many businesses are actually down. And what I mean by down is the level of work for some have come down, and there might be more time that you have personally to invest in yourself. Hold on a minute. I'm in Florida. For those of you who didn't catch it initially, I'm in Florida at my daughter's home in the guest bedroom, and everything is blooming here, and my allergies. My allergies are driving me crazy. So apologize for my voice and the coughing. Okay, so the question about how can you invest in yourself and skill sets. So first, do a self-assessment. Determine what skills that you actually are out there that you want to improve. And take the time to pick 1 or 2. Because frankly, there's a lot available online right now. If you want to improve, you want to improve everything about how you communicate. There's different webinars out there. There's YouTube videos, etc. There's some training programs. If you're trying to, improve your programming skills, that's out there too. So do your own self-assessment first and then focus on those. But there are some skills broadly that I think everybody can improve upon. So one is communication. I talked this whole session about how important it is. It doesn't mean that everybody knows how to do it well. So invest in your own communication. Look for workshops, and there's a lot of them out there right now. Look for YouTubes, do some research on the web. And I think, hold on. Sorry. I think you'll find that there's many options for you to be able to build that. The other is time management, because I don't know about you, but I feel like both professionally and personally, I've got more things going on And the fact that we've got this whole virus we're trying to deal with, that takes a whole nother chunk of bandwidth from you. So time management is another important skill because your ability to manage time effectively is one that you'll be able to carry forward post the crisis. And then leadership. We can all improve our ability to be leaders. And again, there's lots out there. So those would be some skills that I would encourage. Okay, so let me go back to some of the questions I answered up front that I think many of you missed. So one is, what would you say to someone who is in the process of starting a business at this time? Do you think it's a time to press forward or wait? And what I said was, it depends on the type of business. Some industries right now are actually growing and their needs are growing. Delivery businesses, online education and training, online entertainment, workshops, especially around self care. I was telling somebody that I actually cut my own hair today, actually trimmed it up on the sides this morning. I had to order clippers and scissors to actually do it. I've never done it before. So hopefully it looks okay. But a lot of us are having to do a number of self grooming things that we never had to do before. So all those kinds of things are actually growing. Healthcare, tech support. So any companies that are providing tools, capabilities around that are good areas for new businesses. If so, do the research and figure out what's growing and what's not, and look at where your company that you're trying to launch fits. If it's not in a growth area right now, then you need to look at the risks. If you're trying to launch an event business right now, don't. The revenues in event businesses have gone straight to zero. But you can do things to continue to plan and shore up your business for when you're ready to launch. So continue those kinds of activities. All right. Next question. Um, Given the massive digital transformation that COVID-19 is driving for businesses all around the world, large and small, how can we leverage these changes to drive more equity and equality in the world? Well, it's interesting. I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but typically in a crisis, the inequality gap actually widens because typically those people with more resources are able to weather a crisis better than those who are the most vulnerable. And so the disparity actually grows post a crisis. Now, personally, I am very hopeful that this crisis, which is the health crisis, is going to increase awareness that when we aren't doing things as a society that helps all people stay safe and healthy, it actually brings more risk to all of us. And therefore, I'm hopeful that we will figure out how to put in place a basic healthcare capability for everyone. Because it not only helps those who are the most disadvantaged, it actually helps all of us stay healthier if we can keep the population at large healthier. And by having a healthcare foundation, it actually has a trickle down effect to improving a number of different areas. You'd be amazed how not having basic healthcare actually impacts so many other things. Even in the 2008, 2009 housing crisis, the number one cause for bankruptcies was not mortgages and losing people's homes, it was a healthcare event. So, while I don't see a direct correlation for coming out of it, here's exactly what will be done. I do think it's going to raise awareness. And we've seen in time that when raise awareness is risen and people get on the bandwagon, that we can actually make change. So if enough people want to see change, I think it will happen. All right. Question that just came in. Yes, I'm being asked about MetricStream. We were at an early stage of our business when the Great Recession happened in 2008, 2009. Any tips to approach the businesses in this environment? Answer is yes, and we were. As a matter of fact, we found ourselves in the terrible situation of being in the process of actually scaling our business. We were investing in marketing and sales and adding to our team just at the time that the financial crisis hit at the end of 2008. And we actually had to tighten up It did require for MetricStream layoffs because we just didn't have the cash and the money. Um, but one of the things that did happen is we came together stronger as a team. Those communications I talked about, we communicated often, and we were able to use it as a way to really galvanize everyone to some very basic priorities. And they were we had to close new business because if we did not close new business, we would not have cash to make payroll. It was very simple. And because it was that simple, everybody rallied. So, my biggest tips when I talk about communication, communication, communication is that. Second, I absolutely leveraged being an inspirational leader and being able to talk to people and share the vision of where we're trying to go and why we're doing it and what role people played in it. And that helps because when you get up every day not knowing if the business is going to survive, you have to have and believe in the vision of the leaders. The other thing I will tell you is when you do have to make tough decisions, make sure as a leader, you're participating in those tough decisions, whether it's pay cuts or whatever, right? Extra effort, more times day, whatever it is, it needs to happen top down, not just at the bottom, so that people feel that you are absolutely part of that team. Okay. Any other questions before we close out for today? I'm looking on the live chat to see if anything else has come through. Nope, I think we're set. Well, listen, everybody, I appreciate your participating and I apologize for the technical difficulties. In the future, when you tune in, if you can't hear me, tell me right away. Oh, wait, here's one more. Potential clients. What about potential clients? Um, not sure what that question means. If we're talking about how to find customers in this time frame, here's where it's really important to be very clear on what value proposition you are offering to the market, and then figure out which companies have the biggest need for your value. And instead of trying to cast wide nets, go target very specific companies for what it is that you're offering. It's much more effective, and I think you'll get better response. That's what we did. When we said we have to go win new deals, we looked at our list and our target, and we figured out there was one. I'll give you an example. There was one big bank, I won't name it, one big bank that we just had to have. And we just all agreed that we were going to win this deal no matter what. And we put everything we had at it. But we were very targeted versus being broad because we didn't have the bandwidth, the money, or anything to be broad in our marketing. We had to be very targeted. Okay. All right, everyone. I'm going to sign off. Thanks very much. Good luck during this period. Stay tuned. I'll do another live session next month. I always announce these on LinkedIn as well as Instagram. And if you have any questions, just shoot me an email. And oh, by the way, I have a book coming out. So it's called Unapologetically Ambitious. Take risks, break barriers, and create success on your own terms. It's basically about how to achieve your aspirations by being intentional. So it's on Amazon for pre-order. I appreciate your support. All righty. Bye, everyone.